The ballroom shimmered under a constellation of chandeliers, their golden light dancing across the polished marble floor. The scent of champagne, fresh roses, and wealth lingered in the air, a fragrance Lisa Moore had grown accustomed to, but never quite felt like she belonged to. She stood near the edge of the grand hall, her posture straight, but her grip tightening around the delicate stem of her untouched champagne flute. The fabric of her navy dress, borrowed, pressed to perfection, felt like an illusion, wrapping her in a confidence she didn't fully possess. This was supposed to be a night of triumph, an event she had meticulously planned down to the last napkin fold. A night where, for once, she wasn't just the woman behind the scenes, the invisible orchestrator ensuring everything ran smoothly. Tonight, she had allowed herself the indulgence of stepping into the world she built for others. And then she saw him. Jake. The man who had once made her feel like the center of his universe, only to discard her for someone shinier, more connected, more suited for success. He stood at the center of a small, glittering crowd, laughing effortlessly, the picture of charm and success. And beside him, clinging to his arm, was Vanessa. All effortless beauty and grace, her sleek blonde waves framing a face untouched by doubt. Lisa's stomach curled in on itself, but she forced her breath to remain steady. She could walk past them, keep her head high, pretend she didn't see them. But Jake's eyes flicked toward her first, and he smirked. Not in surprise, not even in passing amusement, but in the kind of way that said he knew exactly what he was doing. His gaze raked over her, assessing, and for a moment, she felt like nothing more than a past mistake he had neatly corrected. He took a casual step forward, closing the distance just enough to let her know this wasn't going to be a clean getaway. Vanessa, sensing an opportunity, leaned in closer to him, her hand conveniently resting on his chest, just beneath the glittering engagement ring that could probably buy Lisa's entire apartment complex. Lisa wanted to turn, to walk away before he could say a word, but she was already caught. A polite smile curled at Vanessa's lips, but her eyes gleamed with something else. Lisa felt the heat crawl up her throat before she could suppress it. She needed to leave. She needed to escape this moment before it crushed her. She took a slow step back, searching for the quickest exit. And then a hand slid around her waist. The touch was firm, assured, possessive. Lisa stiffened. The warmth of it, the sheer confidence in the way it rested at the small of her back, sent a jolt of shock through her body before her brain could catch up. Then came the voice. Smooth. Deep. Amused. A voice that didn't just belong in this world of power and influence. It owned it. She didn't even need to turn to know that whoever was standing beside her was someone who wasn't ignored in a room like this. Jake's expression shifted in an instant. The quiet certainty in his smirk faltered, just slightly. But Lisa saw it. And suddenly, the heat in her chest wasn't from humiliation anymore. It was something else. Her breath hitched, but before she could react, before she could even look at the stranger now holding her like she belonged to him, she saw the flicker of curiosity in the faces around them. Jake no longer had the upper hand, and just like that, she chose to play along. Whoever this man was, whoever had just swept into her disaster of an evening and taken control, he had just changed the entire game. And she was about to find out why. The sunlight poured through the cracks of Lisa's cheap apartment blinds, painting soft golden lines across the ceiling. She lay there, staring up, replaying the events of the previous night. The weight of Nathan Steele's hand on her waist. The way the entire room had shifted the moment he stepped into her world. The way Jake's smug expression had faltered for the first time since their breakup. It felt like a dream, a fleeting, ridiculous, impossible dream. Until her phone buzzed. A single message. Nathan Steele. Meet me. 10 a.m. Club Valmont. Don't be late. Lisa sat up, heart pounding. Club Valmont. She'd only ever heard whispers about it. A place where the city's most powerful gathered behind velvet ropes and mahogany doors. It wasn't a nightclub. It was a sanctuary for the elite. A place where deals worth millions were made over aged whiskey and unspoken rules. What the hell did he want with her? The elevator doors slid open, revealing a penthouse so pristine, so effortlessly extravagant, that Lisa momentarily forgot how to breathe. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched along the walls, offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. The air smelled of expensive cologne and freshly brewed espresso. And there he was. Nathan Steele stood near the glass wall, one hand tucked into the pocket of his tailored charcoal suit, the other holding a lowball glass with amber liquid swirling inside. He looked completely at ease, like he owned the world and had never questioned it. Lisa forced herself to take a breath. She didn't belong here. Nathan turned at the sound of her heels clicking against the marble floor. His gaze swept over her, unreadable, calculating. "You're punctual," he noted, setting his drink down on the sleek black desk beside him. Lisa wasn't sure whether it was a compliment or just an observation. Either way, she wasn't about to let herself feel small in front of him. Her fingers curled around the strap of her purse. "What do you want?" Nathan exhaled, slow and measured, like he was deciding how much to say. Then, with the same quiet confidence he had shown last night, he gestured toward the headlines flashing across the massive TV screen mounted on the wall. Lisa followed his gaze and froze. Her face was everywhere. Nathan Steele's mystery woman. Who is Lisa Moore? The millionaire's new love story, inside the unexpected romance of the year. From nobody to it girl overnight? Lisa's stomach dropped. She had spent years in the shadows, building a career, trying to claw her way into the high society events world, only to have her name explode across gossip columns overnight because of one reckless moment. She turned back to Nathan, pulse hammering. He was watching her closely, waiting for her reaction. Then, he spoke. "If the media already thinks we're together." He leaned against his desk, arms crossing casually over his chest. "Why not make it real?" Lisa's breath hitched. This was insane, but Nathan wasn't done. He took a step closer, his voice calm, decisive. "I need a girlfriend, just for a month." The words hit Lisa like a cold splash of water. Nathan's world was one of strategy and control. Every move he made was calculated. There was no way this was about romance. He continued, eyes never leaving hers. "My investors," he gestured toward the documents stacked neatly on his desk, "need to see stability before they approve a major business expansion. They want assurance that I'm not reckless, that I can commit to more than just financial gains." Lisa swallowed. She could see the pieces fitting together. He needed someone to play a role. Nathan straightened, his gaze unwavering. "In exchange, I'll introduce you to the right people. You want your own event planning company? I'll make it happen. The doors you've been knocking on for years? I'll have them open in a week." Silence stretched between them. Lisa felt the weight of it pressing down on her. This was everything she had worked for. A chance to finally stand on her own, to be something more than the girl left behind, more than the woman Jake dismissed. But the air in the room felt heavy. Lisa glanced at the contract sitting on his desk. Because of course there was a contract. Nathan Steele didn't do anything without terms and conditions. 1 month. A fake relationship. A step toward everything she ever wanted. And then Nathan's voice dropped just slightly, his tone softer now, but somehow sharper at the same time. "You play your part well, Lisa, and you'll get everything you ever wanted." Then, after a pause, he added, almost as an afterthought, "But don't go digging into my past." Lisa's stomach twisted. Something about the way he said it, the way his usual cool demeanor hardened for just a second too long, sent a ripple of unease through her. She ignored it. After all, how bad could it be? She reached for the pen and signed. The night air hummed with energy. A sea of glittering gowns and sharp suits moved through the towering glass atrium of the city's most exclusive venue. Inside, the lighting was low, moody, accentuating the sleek modern architecture that whispered wealth in every polished surface. Lisa had spent years planning events like this, designing them, orchestrating them, making sure the right people were seated in the right places, ensuring every detail was flawless. Tonight, for the first time, she wasn't behind the scenes. Tonight, she was on display. Her dress, a midnight blue that hugged her in all the right places, had been selected by Nathan's team. Her hair styled into waves that tumbled effortlessly, though the effort had taken an entire afternoon. Everything about her look had been curated to match the part she was expected to play. Nathan Steele's girlfriend. A role that had seemed so simple on paper, until now. The moment they stepped inside, every head turned. Nathan was used to it. His presence commanded attention without effort, his confidence woven into every movement. He navigated the room with an ease that Lisa could never hope to mimic, exchanging greetings with men who owned entire industries, with women who wielded power like currency. And then there was Lisa, the outsider. She felt the weight of the whispers before she even heard them. A nobody, a passing fling, a convenient arrangement. Lisa kept her chin high, her smile polished but distant, careful not to let the nerves show. But Nathan noticed. Of course he did. Without warning, his hand slid to the small of her back, a casual, effortless claim, guiding her deeper into the room, into the spotlight. His fingers pressed lightly against the fabric of her dress, a touch that should have been meaningless, yet somehow sent a slow ripple of warmth through her spine. It was just for the cameras, just part of the show. And yet, a voice broke through the murmurs, smooth, practiced. A reporter, weaving through the crowd like a predator honing in on fresh prey. Nathan barely hesitated, his posture shifting just slightly. Lisa felt it before she saw it. The way he drew her closer, his arm tightening around her waist in a move that was as much protective as it was possessive. The questions came fast, polished and calculated, designed to extract a story. Nathan answered them with his usual effortless charm, but Lisa barely registered the words. She was too aware of him. The way his breath brushed against her skin when he leaned down, pretending to whisper something just for her. The way his lips barely moved, yet the heat of his voice sent a slow shiver curling down her spine. The way she laughed, too naturally, too easily, at whatever teasing remark he made, even though her mind was still trying to catch up. It was all part of the act. But was it? She told herself she was imagining it, the way his hand lingered just a second too long when he placed it on her lower back, the way his thumb grazed absent-mindedly along the side of her waist. She told herself it didn't mean anything. The way his gaze softened whenever she spoke about her dreams. The way he actually listened when she talked about the business she wanted to build, when no one else ever had. Nathan Steele was a man who never did anything without a reason. Everything was calculated. So why did it feel like the way he looked at her wasn't part of the script? Lisa forced herself to keep her guard up. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But when Nathan reached across the table later that night, sliding her favorite drink in front of her without her even having to ask, Lisa felt the first crack in her carefully constructed walls. Because she never told him what she liked. He had just noticed. Her pulse stuttered, but she shoved the feeling down, ignoring the way his eyes lingered on hers for just a second too long. She reminded herself of the contract, the rules, the deal. But the problem was, she wasn't sure she believed it anymore. The city never truly slept. From Nathan's penthouse, the skyline stretched in endless golden streaks, flickering with distant life. The hum of traffic far below barely reached Lisa's ears, drowned out by the quiet luxury of the space around her. But tonight, the silence felt heavier, like something was watching her. She had never spent this much time in his world before. The high ceilings, the curated art on the walls, the perfectly arranged shelves. Everything about his home was calculated, too pristine, too untouched, as if it had been designed as a place to be admired, not lived in. She was beginning to realize Nathan himself was the same way. Something about him had always felt controlled, carefully constructed, but lately there were cracks in that facade. The late-night phone calls he took in hushed tones. The unmarked envelopes left at his doorstep that he swept away before she could see. The fleeting moments where something unreadable flickered behind his eyes, like a shadow he couldn't quite outrun. Lisa had told herself she wouldn't dig deeper, that whatever secrets he carried weren't her concern. Until now. She had only been looking for a pen. Nathan was out, and she had spent the past hour in his office, scanning through planning notes for their next public event. The desk drawers were mostly empty, organized to an almost unsettling degree. But when she reached into the bottom drawer, her fingers brushed against something that didn't belong. A single, unopened letter. No return address. Just her name. Lisa felt her pulse skip as she unfolded it. The paper was crisp, the ink bold, each letter pressed with deliberate precision. She doesn't know the truth, does she? If she stays, she'll end up like the others. Her breath caught. The others? The words curled in her stomach like ice, leaving behind a slow, creeping unease. Her first instinct was to dismiss it. A prank, some mistake. But deep down, she already knew. This wasn't a joke. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the letter back, exactly as she had found it. She stood frozen, listening to the silence pressing in around her, feeling her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Everything about this felt wrong. And yet, when Nathan returned home hours later, she said nothing. She watched him, though. Closer than before. The way he ran a hand through his hair, tension threading his movements. The way his expression flickered when he thought no one was looking. The way his fingers lingered on an envelope he pulled from his coat pocket, eyes darkening before he tucked it away. Lisa had told herself that this was just business, that she didn't need to know who he was beyond what their arrangement required. But now, she wasn't so sure. Because someone, somewhere, wanted to warn her. And she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of something dangerous. Something she wasn't supposed to find. The evening unfolded like a scene from a dream, one Lisa couldn't decide was a fantasy or a trap. The VIP gala shimmered in soft golden light, reflections dancing across polished marble floors. Chandeliers hung like frozen constellations overhead, and the air was thick with champagne and whispered conversations, the kind that shaped fortunes and destroyed reputations in equal measure. Lisa had been to events like this before, but never like this. Never on his arm. Nathan Steele moved through the crowd like he belonged, his presence commanding attention without effort, every gesture, every glance, calculated yet effortless. He knew exactly what to say, exactly when to say it. But tonight, there was something different. The way his touch lingered just a fraction longer when he guided her through the room. The way his voice dropped lower when he spoke to her. Words meant only for her ears. The way his gaze settled on her lips for just a second too long before looking away. It was dangerous. And yet, when the music shifted into something slow, something intoxicating, and Nathan turned to her with that look, Lisa didn't protest. She let him lead her onto the dance floor. The world faded. The first brush of his fingertips against her back was barely there, but it sent a ripple through her, something unspoken but impossible to ignore. His palm settled at the base of her spine, warm through the silk of her dress. Each step was smooth, effortless, as if they had done this 1,000 times before. She felt him. The steady rhythm of his breathing, the tension beneath the surface, like a storm held at bay. He was in control. Nathan always was. But there was something else now. Something raw. She told herself this was just for show, just for the cameras watching from the edges of the room. But when he leaned in, his lips grazing her ear in a way that sent heat curling through her veins, she forgot why any of it mattered. And then, the kiss. It was supposed to be a cover, a fleeting moment to sell the story, to keep up appearances. But the moment their lips met, everything shifted. There was no calculation, no strategy, only heat, pressure, the slow unraveling of a lie that was becoming something else entirely. She should have pulled away, but she didn't. And neither did he. Later that night, Lisa stood in the dimly lit hallway of Nathan's penthouse, her mind still tangled in the remnants of whatever had happened between them. She needed space, air, something to ground her before she lost herself completely in whatever game they were playing. That's when she noticed it. A door, one she had never seen open before. Nathan was still in the other room, his voice low as he spoke to someone on the phone. She shouldn't have stepped inside, but she did. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, a chill settled in her spine. The office was nothing like the rest of his pristine, curated home. The lighting was dim, shadows stretching along the walls. Papers were stacked haphazardly on a desk, a glass of untouched whiskey resting beside them. The air smelled of something dark. Old books, ink, something that didn't belong. And then she saw it. Her breath caught. An entire wall covered in newspaper clippings. Lisa stepped closer, fingers trembling as she scanned the headlines. A missing woman, a case gone cold, a name she didn't recognize, but Nathan's name was there, buried in the details. The dates spanned years. Some articles were yellowed with age. But then, her own face stared back at her. The latest article. Lisa's body turned to ice, the words blurred, her mind reeling. Why was her name here? What the hell was Nathan hiding? A shadow flickered behind her. She wasn't alone anymore. The room felt smaller than before, the air heavier. The steady hum of the city outside seemed muted, distant, as if the penthouse was its own world, one where secrets thrived and the truth twisted itself into something unrecognizable. Lisa stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the wall of newspaper clippings in front of her. The faces of missing women stared back, some blurred by age, others fresh as if they had only vanished yesterday. And there, among them, her own face, printed on an article that should not exist. Her pulse pounded in her ears. She wasn't supposed to see this. She wasn't supposed to be part of this. A presence loomed behind her, the quiet shift of fabric, the weight of someone watching. She didn't need to turn around to know it was Nathan. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then, his voice, low, measured, like someone choosing their words carefully. Lisa didn't move. Her fingers trembled at her sides, the weight of everything she had ignored crashing over her at once. She had felt the tension in him before, the guarded looks, the restless energy that never quite faded, even in his most composed moments. She had seen the flickers of darkness behind his carefully controlled demeanor. She had ignored them. But now, there was no turning away. Nathan didn't rush to explain. He let the silence stretch, his presence a quiet force behind her, waiting for her to make the first move. When she finally turned, his face was unreadable. But his eyes, they were something else entirely. Something raw, something almost weary. Lisa had spent her life reading people, studying their expressions, understanding what they wanted before they even spoke. But Nathan Steele? She couldn't tell if he was the predator or the prey. She asked him anyway. And for the first time, Nathan didn't deflect. He told her. Years ago, a woman disappeared. Not just any woman, his fiancée, a name he had never spoken to her before, a story he had never intended for her to hear. The details came slowly, his voice devoid of its usual confidence. A dinner, an argument, a moment that should have been nothing, until she was gone. No trace, no final words. And Nathan? He was the last person to see her. People whispered, they speculated, they accused. But there was never any proof. No body. No answers. Just a man left in the wreckage of a life that no longer belonged to him. Nathan had spent years trying to clear his name, chasing ghosts, digging into shadows that only grew darker the deeper he went. But someone didn't want him to find the truth. And now Lisa was in the middle of it. She felt the walls closing in, the weight of his words sinking into her skin. Everything about this man had been a carefully built puzzle, one she had convinced herself she could solve. But now, standing there, looking into his eyes, she wasn't sure if she had pieced together a tragic story or walked straight into a nightmare. Her breath came uneven, her mind spiraling through every moment they had shared, every touch, every glance, every time she had told herself she was safe. Now she had to ask herself, was she falling for a man who had been framed? Or was she staring into the eyes of her own executioner? Lisa's world had always been built on logic, control, and clear decisions. But now, she was standing in the center of something that had none of those things. Everything was unraveling. The air in Nathan's penthouse felt thicker, heavier, as if the walls themselves were closing in around her. Her body screamed at her to leave, to run while she still had the chance. But as she turned toward the door, her phone buzzed. A single message flashed on the screen. At first she thought it was Nathan. It wasn't. You know too much. Stay quiet or disappear like the last one. A single line, chilling in its simplicity. Lisa's hands turned ice cold. She scanned the empty room, heart pounding against her ribs, the distant sounds of the city below now feeling impossibly far away. Who sent this? How did they know? And worse, who was watching her? Her mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. She had thought Nathan was the one hiding secrets. She had thought she had stepped into his dark past. But what if there was something more? Something neither of them saw coming? Nathan emerged from the hallway, his presence as commanding as ever, but Lisa didn't feel safe anymore. Because now, the danger wasn't just him. It was something bigger, something unseen. She had to get out. But just as she reached for the door, it all clicked. Nathan never needed a fake relationship. He had never sought her out. It was his rival, Darren Cole. The pieces fell into place like a puzzle she never wanted to solve. The convenience of their first meeting, the way she had been pushed into Nathan's world, the constant distractions, events, media appearances, all keeping Nathan occupied while something darker lurked beneath. Lisa had never been chosen. She had been used. A pawn in a game far bigger than she ever imagined. And now, she was collateral damage. Her breath caught in her throat. Darren had set all of this up to destroy Nathan, to keep him chasing shadows while his real downfall was being orchestrated right under his nose. And Lisa? She was never meant to uncover the truth. She was never meant to walk away. The message on her phone was a warning, and she knew without a doubt, if she didn't disappear on her own, someone would make sure she did. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. Lisa's world had always been built on logic, control, and clear decisions. But now, she was standing in the center of something that had none of those things. Everything was unraveling. The air in Nathan's penthouse felt thicker, heavier, as if the walls themselves were closing in around her. Her body screamed at her to leave, to run while she still had the chance. But as she turned toward the door, her phone buzzed. A single message flashed on the screen. At first, she thought it was Nathan. It wasn't. "You know too much. Stay quiet or disappear like the last one." A single line, chilling in its simplicity. Lisa's hands turned ice cold. She scanned the empty room, heart pounding against her ribs, the distant sounds of the city below now feeling impossibly far away. Who sent this? How did they know? And worse, who was watching her? Her mind raced, trying to put the pieces together. She had thought Nathan was the one hiding secrets. She had thought she had stepped into his dark past. But what if there was something more? Something neither of them saw coming? Nathan emerged from the hallway, his presence as commanding as ever. But Lisa didn't feel safe anymore. Because now, the danger wasn't just him. It was something bigger, something unseen. She had to get out. But just as she reached for the door, it all clicked. Nathan never needed a fake relationship. He had never sought her out. It was his rival, Darren Cole. The pieces fell into place like a puzzle she never wanted to solve. The convenience of their first meeting, the way she had been pushed into Nathan's world, the constant distractions, events, media appearances, all keeping Nathan occupied while something darker lurked beneath. Lisa had never been chosen. She had been used. A pawn in a game far bigger than she ever imagined. And now, she was collateral damage. Her breath caught in her throat. Darren had set all of this up to destroy Nathan, to keep him chasing shadows while his real downfall was being orchestrated right under his nose. And Lisa? She was never meant to uncover the truth. She was never meant to walk away. The message on her phone was a warning. And she knew, without a doubt, if she didn't disappear on her own, someone would make sure she did. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The morning light poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Lisa's new office, casting golden streaks across the polished hardwood floors. She ran her fingers over the elegant nameplate on the glass door. Her name, her company, her dream finally realized. The walls, once bare, were now adorned with mood boards, fabric swatches, and event mock-ups. Every inch of the space screamed possibility, a testament to the journey that had led her here. A new life, a fresh start, and yet, she wasn't alone. Lisa felt the familiar presence before she even turned around. Nathan. He stood in the doorway, impossibly at ease in his tailored suit, holding an envelope between his fingers as if it weighed nothing. But when he held it out to her, his expression was unreadable. Lisa took it, pulling out the contents with cautious fingers. A single key glimmered under the office lights. "To my place, if you ever want to come back." The words were simple. No pressure, no expectations, just an open door. Lisa exhaled, running her thumb over the metal, the weight of it familiar, like the decision itself. Then, without a second thought, she tossed it back at him. Nathan caught it mid-air, his brows lifting in amusement. She smirked. "You should know by now, Steele. I don't move in without a proposal." A slow, knowing grin spread across his face. "Then I guess I better start planning something spectacular." The look in his eyes promised he wasn't bluffing. Lisa laughed, shaking her head, already knowing that whatever came next with Nathan Steele, it would be anything but ordinary.